do yourself a favour, check out the Carlisle Cult Cinema Club, and don't forget not just to rate it, but also to subscribe on YouTube or Facebook.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and on the latest episode of Carlisle Cult Cinema Club Presents, we have Sam Irvin, film, television director, producer, screenwriter, actor, author, teacher, with 144 IMDb credits, probably more to be honest, including directing Guilty as Charged with Rod Steigers and Elvira's Haunted Hills with Elvira, Oblivion 1 and 2 with Oblivion 2 with Maxwell Caulfield, 6-time Rondo winner and a fabulous cult icon, Sam Irvin. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
You're more than welcome. And I've got a few questions. We want to kind of, go through your.
Do we have about 6 hours?
yeah. So yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be great. So let's kick off. You're a young lad. Your family own a string of cinemas and theatres, growing up, and your first horror film was Pit and the Pendulum, on the cinema at age 5. How did that shape your life later on? And you obviously direct the spoof Elvira's Haunted Hills.
Yes, well, at the age of 5, my 2 older sisters were babysitting me, and because my dad owned movie theaters, they would babysit me by taking me to the movies, and I got to see the first run of Pit and the Pendulum in 1961 at the age of 5, and it completely changed my life. I fell in love with horror films. I fell in love with Vincent Price and Roger Corman, the whole thing. And then when I was 14, no, a little bit younger, actually, about 12 or 13, we got an assignment in my class to memorize a monologue. And of course, the teacher was thinking like Shakespeare. I'm allergic to iambic pentameter. And I said, could I please do Edgar Allan Poe? And she said, yes. I raced home. This is in the 60s, long before home video, but I had recorded the audio on reel-to-reel audio tapes of horror movies off of television. And I had Pit and the Pendulum. And I went to the climax to Vincent Price's monologue and transcribed the whole thing, and went in the next day, and I do, do you know where you are, Bartolome? You're about to enter hell, the neverworld, the infernal region, the abode of the damned, a place of torment, Gehenna, the rock of the bit, and the pendulum, the razor edge of destiny, thus the condition of man bound on an island from which he can never nowhere hope to escape, surrounded by the waiting pit of hell, which must destroy him finally. I got an A. I don't think she knew that it was really written by the screenwriter, Richard Matheson, and I didn't point that out. But anyway, it came in very handy because a couple of years later, I was 14, and I lived in Asheville, North Carolina, but I got my mom to drive me 4 hours to Atlanta, Georgia, where I had read in the newspaper that there was a stage production of Oliver, and the character of Fagin was being played by Vincent Price. So
nice.
We saw the show. We went backstage afterwards. There was a line of fans, and when it was our turn, I told him that I knew this monologue, and he said, "You do not." And I did it for him, and all the other fans in line applauded, and he was incredibly impressed. He also, my name, when I said my name, he said, "Oh, you must be related to Senator Sam Irvin from North Carolina, who became really famous as the Watergate chairman of the Watergate Committee, right, and was a very big senator back then. But he spelled his name Ervin, and I spell mine Irvin, but it's pronounced the same way. And so he was, he thought that, and I said no and explained it. But it helped him remember my name. It made me very memorable. And I also I'd already started at the age of 12, I started booking Saturday morning kiddie matinee shows at my dad's theater for horror movies. And I had done a Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe retrospective. And I had a flyer that I had made for that with all of the Poe films, with little things cut out of the press books and everything. And I showed that to him. So I made a very good impression on Mr. Price that day. And then a year later, he was doing a lecture tour, and I got my mom to take me to that, and we saw him again. He made me do the monologue for the people in line. I was like his little wind-up toy. And then in 1974, I was doing a magazine called Bizarre. It was a fanzine on horror films. And I got my parents to send me as a graduation, or high school graduation present to London so I could interview, Christopherlee and Peter Cushing and all, and Ingrid Pitt and all the horror stars and directors, Terrence Fisher, everybody. And the most incredible day of my whole life, I interviewed Christopher Lee on the set of The Man with the Golden Gun and spent the day with him at Pinewood Studios watching them shoot a James Bond movie, and met Roger Moore and the whole thing. And we rode back into London at the end of the day with Hervé Villachez, who was drunk as a skunk. And I mean, the whole thing was an absolutely the most incredible day imaginable. And you would think, oh, that's enough for a fanboy like me for one day. Nope. As soon as I got back to the hotel, I wanted to go see Diana Rigg, who I was such a fan of from Emma Peel and the Avengers and the Bond girl and On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but she had played Vincent Price's daughter in Theater of Blood, which was one of my favorite films. And she was appearing on the West End in Pygmalion as Eliza Doolittle. And I was like, I want to see her act in that show. And hopefully I'll go backstage, at the stage door, and hopefully maybe meet her as she's leaving and get an autograph and try to talk her into an interview. I sit down in the theater. I hear this very familiar laugh right behind me. I turn around and, yep, it's Vincent frickin' Price. And before I can open my mouth, he goes, Sam, what are you doing here? And I told him what I was doing, and he said, oh, you're coming backstage with us. I'll introduce you to Diana. And by the way, this is my new fiance, Coral Brown, who was one of the critics in Theater of Blood, who he murders. And it turned out that Diana Rigg had actually introduced them, and they had fallen in love during the making the movie. And so it was a love fest between the three of them. We went backstage, and Diana was like, oh my goodness. And he wound me up and told Diana that I knew his monologue from Pit and the Pendulum, and he made me do it for Diana Rigg. And then, of course, she was put on the spot. She had to give me an interview. She said, could you come back on the day I do a matinee and an evening performance, and we'll do the interview between the shows? And that's what I did, and it was fabulous. Okay, so then I became really good friends with Vincent Price after that, and I was developing a film project that he and Coral Brown were going to star in, and I was going to direct. It unfortunately never happened. It was written for us by Brian Clemens, who had written and created the Avengers, and he wrote and directed Captain Chrono's Vampire Hunter, and he wrote the script to Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde and Golden Voyage of Sinbad. He was just the most incredible writer and was so great. And it was a dead body comedy called Stiff. But it never ended up happening, and it dragged on and on and on. And then Weekend at Bernie's came out and kind of stole the thunder out of a dead body comedy. And it was one of those projects that was kind of doomed. But at any rate, we became even closer friends through all of that. And there was even one point where things started to get a little intimate, and Vincent, I think, would have liked to have had a little fling. But cooler heads prevailed. I was still in the closet. I was married to a woman at the time. And because we were doing this project together, I was worried about, if something went wrong. And I just kind of gracefully bowed out of that. But I write all about it in my book, I Was a Teenage Monster Hunter, How I Met Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, and more. And all those interviews that I did back then, 35 of them, they're great time capsules, are all collected in this book.
So
available on
everybody
Amazon.
Go and buy that book.
It's most fun I've ever done. I mean, it became not only the collection of interviews, but sort of a coming of age memoir as a monster kid. Anyway, so yes, I became very close with Vincent, and we remained really good friends right up until the time he was not well. My first feature film was Guilty as Charged, as you mentioned, with Rod Steiger. And Rod Steiger plays a madman who kidnaps murderers and puts them in prison in his
Yeah.
dungeon and then fries them on his own electric chair. Now, talk about a role that would have been perfect for Vincent, and that's who I wanted. But by the time that movie happened in 1990, 91, Vincent was not doing well enough to be able to play a lead in a movie. And when it came out, it opened in Los Angeles, and Kevin Thomas, the Los Angeles Times critic, gave the movie the most rave review. I mean, it was like Citizen Kane. I've never read such an incredible review. And he said that Rod Steiger's performance reminded him of Vincent Price in Theater of Blood. Now,
There
no
you go.
sooner did I read that than the phone rings, and it's Vincent Price, who said he just read this in the paper and he was calling me to congratulate me and said, "My God, we go back all the way to your childhood. I'm so proud of you. This is amazing. I can't believe they're comparing his performance to me." And I said, "I wish that you could have been in it." And I said, "You know what? It's playing in a theater in Westwood, which is near where you live. Let me come and pick you up and we'll go see it." And he said, "Unfortunately, I'm bedridden now. I'm an invalid, and I just can't." And it was so heartbreaking. But we talked for a few minutes, and then a few days later, I got this wonderful letter from him. And but it was the last time that I was able to communicate with him. And that letter and everything is all in this book. But then a few years after he passed away, Cassandra Peterson, who's Elvira, called me up and said she was interviewing directors for the second Elvira film. Would I come up to her place and talk? And I went up there, and she hands me the script. And she says, "This is Elvira's Haunted Hills. It's a spoof of the Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe movies like Pit and the Pendulum. Are you familiar with those?" And I said, "Do you know where you are, Bartolome? You're about to enter hell, the neverworld." And I went into the whole monologue. And the whole time I'm doing it, she's cocking her head and squinting her eyes and looking at me like I'm completely nuts. And when I got to the very end of it, she went, "You're hired." And literally, that is how I got that job. So, I mean, it's a long story. It's a long-winded story, sorry, but it has an
No,
incredible
it's all right.
arc.
No, definitely. I mean, you've answered the first bunch of questions I had in that just one piece. You know what I mean? So,
sorry, but
no,
it's
no,
just, you know,
it's fine. It's
it's the
absolutely
most
fine.
insane, you know, it's like I got so much mileage out of that freaking monologue. And yeah, that movie just absolutely, it's to this day. I mean, I just absolutely love it. There was something about, you know, we all have a film that we saw when we were young and impressionable that just will never, you know, got into our soul, and that's the one for me. The other one for me was The Bride of Frankenstein, which I saw on television. And where I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, we had Shock Theater. I'm sure you know that most, you know, all American markets had this Shock
Yeah,
package of syndicated horror movies that Screen Gems, which was part of Columbia, had licensed from Universal, and it was all the Universal classics and everything. And they would show ours showed on Saturday afternoons, right after Dick Clark's American Bandstand, and others, you know, showed sometimes late at night or whatever. It depended on the local market, and a lot of markets could afford to have horror hosts. We unfortunately didn't, so I didn't grow up with a horror host, but many others did. But that was how
we
I
never
was able
had
to
horror
see
hosts in
Bride and
England
all
at all.
this and all the Universal movies.
We never had horror hosts at all in England
I know.
until
They rated they wouldn't let kids see them, right?
yeah, no, it was just for adults.
Yeah.
We did there was the Friday horror double bills on TV, on BBC Two that ran from the early 70s
Yes.
right through till the 80s, until the VHS era, really.
Yeah.
That's where I first saw the Universal monsters, you know, the Edgar Allan Poe films. So I grew up watching them before the VHS era kind of happened.
Right.
But
Right.
as I say, we didn't have a horror host until it was the 90s. And we had one on BBC One
Yeah, it's really sad that, the monster kids in England really were deprived of seeing, if you're someone of my age. I mean, I'm 69. I was born in 1956. So I was seeing movies from, the early 60s as just a, 6-year-old kid, and man, did they make an impression. Oh my Lord. It's just amazing how those films are just stuck with me. And
Yeah,
so yeah, it is a little bit of a missed experience for a lot of the British fanboys from that era, growing up
yeah.
without having that outlet.
I was lucky. My dad was a horror film fan, and he let me watch anything. That we had no censorship, especially in the VHS era, where I delved into the
Yeah.
video nasties before they all got banned, which was a travesty as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, so when you were at school during a summer break, 1977, you interned with De Palma.
Well, this is what happened. It's it's so interesting how the timing of all of this is so incredible. I had the whole I mean, I was such a Hammer fan and such an Anglophile. I wanted to immigrate to England and try to become a director for Hammer Films and Amicus and all the other people who were making horror films in England. I was so enamored with those films. And the whole time I was doing my fanzine Bazaar, it was all about, oh, I need to go to England and interview all these people. And I really thought I was going to do that. But by the time 1975 rolled around, Hammer was, Amicus was already defunct. Milton
Yeah,
Sabatsky and Max J. Rosenberg had already split up. Hammer Films was on, taking a big nosedive, um, and I could see the writing on the wall that the industry was failing there, and I was like, what's happening to my dream here? I can't, it's not something that's going to work out the way that if I had been 10 years older and gone there, in 1966 or something, can you imagine? I mean, there were so many great ones being made. Anyway,
oh, completely.
um, I had just, in 1975, I was in college by then, and I had seen a couple of films that absolutely blew me away: Sisters and Phantom of the Paradise, both of which were directed by Brian De Palma. And this was a breath of fresh air, but also a lot of homages to Hitchcock, who I absolutely revered and adored. But I just was blown away by this guy, and I wanted to meet him. And I was chairman of the film committee at school, and we ran the movie theater on campus, and we had a budget. And I decided to do a little Brian De Palma Film Festival with those two films and a couple of others that he had done. And so I found in Hollywood Reporter, because my dad had all the trade journals because he was in the movie theater business, in the production charts, there was a phone number for the casting office of a film that was in early stages of pre-production called Carrie. And nobody knew what Carrie was. It was Stephen King's first book. Nobody knew who Stephen King was. And I call that number cold. By some wild coincidence, he was on a break. They put him right on the phone. I explained what we were doing. He agreed to come to South Carolina. We were going to pay his expenses and everything. And so he came out there. And what's incredible is the timing. After I set it up and got it all arranged, he was going to come, a few weeks later in November of 75. Then I got a letter from Ingrid Pitt, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to be the guest at the Famous Monsters convention in New York in November of 75." And I'm already thinking, uh-oh, November, what date? I hope it doesn't conflict with my Brian De Palma thing. And it was the weekend before. So
Oh,
she
that's
wanted me to
handy.
come up to New York and be her aide de camp for the weekend, which I did. And also guests at the convention were Peter Cushing, who I knew, uh, Michael Carreras, head of Hammer Films, who I knew, And of course, Forrest J. Ackerman, the editor of Famous Monsters, and James Warren, who was the publisher of Famous Monsters, Vampirella, Creepy and Eerie. And it was the most incredible thing. And I was Ingrid's escort. So I got taken to all the VIP dinners, and she would always make sure that I sat between her and Peter Cushing. She was the sweetest thing. And but it was kind of, in a way, my last hurrah with that world of Hammer and everything. Literally, Michael Caine told me he got on the plane to come to the Famous Monsters convention the day that To the Devil a Daughter finished shooting, and he was all high on how, oh, it's going to be bigger than The Exorcist and blah 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 blah. And I'm on Monday, I'm going to Los Angeles to meet with Samuel Z. Arkoff at AIP, and we're going to do a 2-picture deal. They're going to release To the Devil a Daughter, and they're also going to finance and release Vampirella. And they were presenting at this convention Barbara Lee in the Vampirella outfit, and all this stuff. And he was talking up all this big talk about everything that Hammer was doing, which of course none of it worked out. To the Devil a Daughter did not get released by AIP. And AIP was already a B level distributor.
Yeah.
This was a distributor like for drive-ins, and it got released by some fly-by-night company that you never heard of before or after. And To the Devil a Daughter in the United States did next to nothing. And then Vampirella never even got made. And the other films that were happening at that time, like the Satanic Rites of Dracula and the Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, those were supposed to be released by Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers hated them, put them on the shelf, and never released them. And it took Max J. Rosenberg, formerly of Amicus, several years later, it was like 1978 and 9 or something, he formed some little fly-by-night distributor and licensed those 2 films from Warner Brothers, retitled them, and released them to drive-ins for about a half a second, and they didn't do a damn thing. So, Hammer was over, and I suspected it that weekend, and my suspicions were proven correct. Unfortunately, it broke my heart. The only other Hammer film that happened during Michael Caine's tenure was The Lady Vanishes, which was several years later in 78 or 9. And it did nothing. It was an honorable attempt, had a great cast, but just wasn't going to turn things around. And then he lost the company as a result. So anyway, I tell you all this because that weekend was kind of the last hurrah. I get on the plane on Monday after that weekend, fly back to my college, and I was going to the University of South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina. And literally one day later, I'm picking up Brian De Palma at the airport and taking him to my film class and doing this whole festival and everything, which was incredible. And that's how I met Brian De Palma in 1975, literally a day after the Famous Monsters convention. And we stayed in touch. And then I could kick myself that I wasn't bold enough to ask him if I could have worked on Carrie, because it was shooting in the summer during my summer break, and I could have gone and worked on it. I'm so mad because Carrie to this day is my favorite De Palma film. But then when Carrie opened and it was this humongous success, I was like, I'm not going to blow that opportunity again. And so when the following summer he was going to be shooting The Fury, which was another telekinesis movie with Kirk Douglas and John Cassavetes, much bigger budget with 20th Century Fox, and I heard they were going to be shooting in Chicago, and I called up Brian and I said, please, can I come up and work on this? And he said yes. And the whole time I'm going, and that's exactly what he would have done if I had asked him to work on Carrie. Anyway, so I went up there, and it was fantastic. It was so great. But you're going to laugh at this. This has got Kirk Douglas, John Cassavetes, Charles Durning, Amy Irving from Carrie, all of whom I loved. But the person I was most excited about is that he had cast Fiona Lewis in one of the parts. And I swear to God, I was more excited about meeting Fiona Lewis than anything. And that's because she had starred in Dr. Fives Rises Again. She'd played a small part in The Fearless Vampire Killers. And, she was like one little last gasp of my Anglophile British love affair. And we hit it off, and we were palling around and sneaking champagne onto the set and getting Amy Irving drunk, and it was like it was hilarious. It was so incredible. And then after that summer on The Fury, I went back to do my senior year at college, and as I'm about to graduate in May of '78, Brian De Palma calls me and says, "Hey, I've been teaching a class on filmmaking at Sarah Lawrence College. We're going to actually make a film this summer called Home Movies. It's a comedy, and Kirk Douglas is going to be in it. Nancy Allen from Carrie is going to be in it. And why don't you come up and work on it? Because a lot of my students are going to be working on it. It's going to be a mixture of students and professionals." And I was like, yes, thank you very much. And I took my last exam. I didn't even go to my graduation ceremony. And I hopped on a plane and went up there. And I thought I was going to be a production assistant like I had been on The Fury. And he said, "No, you're going to be the associate producer and production manager." So he just kind of kicked me into the deep end to see if I could swim. And apparently I did, because then after that, he ended up hiring me as his full-time assistant. And then I worked on Dress to Kill and a lot of development of other films. Prince of the City, that he ended up not directing, Blowout, which he eventually did direct. So it was just the most incredible experience. And that's how, that was my first professional gig, in the industry, was working with De Palma. And so I just kind of had made the decision that I had to hitch my wagon to him rather than Hammer. So that's how I got started in the business.
And there you go. You've just answered a lot more of the questions. Oh, man. I mean, in Home Movies, you also had a small acting role as well.
Well,
which...
it's a blip. I'm an extra. Basically, Keith Gordon, who's also the young guy in Dress to Kill, he's been spying on his dad in a tree, and he falls out of the tree onto the ground, and I'm just a pedestrian that runs over to, see if he's okay, and I'm kind of holding him up. And you see me for literally a blip as I run into frame and squat down next to him. And then the rest of the time it's a close up on him, but you're seeing my arms sort of cradling him. But that's it. In The Fury, I'm an extra in the amusement park scene when Andrew Stevens is walking through there, and his veins in his forehead are pulsing and all the rides go crazy. Well, the extras, the people directing extras, they kept putting me in all the shots, and I had a full head of red hair and a beard and a blue jean jacket and blue jeans. So I was kind of, I had a kind of memorable, striking appearance. And if you're looking for me, if the camera, is looking this way, and there I am, and then it's looking at that side of the room, there I am. I mean, I'm like in every shot.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And after working with De Palma, you worked with legendary director of My Fair Lady, Bluebird, Philadelphia Story, George Cukor, on his last film, Rich and Famous. What was it like working with such
now, hold on. I didn't really work with him. This is what happened.
All right.
I was producing a film that De Palma had asked me to produce, and it was one of the Home Movies students that he had, named Charlie Loventhal, had written a script called The First Time, and Brian said, "Hey, he's raised half the money. He needs you to go find the other half of the money and produce this movie while I'm doing Blowout. I don't have time to mentor him, so you go do it." And so that's what happened. I went to New Line Cinema and got the other half of the money, and we made this film. And it was a comedy, coming of age comedy. It had Wallace Shawn, it had Wendy Jo Sperber, who I love. This wonderful cast. And anyway, we were shooting it also at Sarah Lawrence College because Charlie had gone there, and we could get locations for free and things like that. The way we had done for with home movies,
Yeah.
and this was a couple years after that, and but we were they had also allowed at Sarah Lawrence College this other film, Rich and Famous, to come and shoot there. And so we were having to make sure that our crews were not, stepping on each other around the campus. And that film was directed by George Cukor and had Jacqueline Bisset and a bunch of other stars. Anyway, so I didn't really work on it, but I did meet people, and it was funny. We were scheduled to do a scene in the quadrant in the beautiful lawn in front of the big building, and they were shooting there in the morning. And we're like, oh, we can do ours in the afternoon after they've finished. Well, we're shooting in the summer. Their scene needed snow. So they had all these cotton rugs and everything that they'd rolled out on the grass to cover the grass with white, and the trees, they'd taken all the leaves off the trees, stripped them bare, and put little cotton snow on the branches and everything. It was going to take 2 days for them to undo everything. And not only that, now it looked really barren and wintry with the trees totally bare. So we ended up, we had to postpone shooting our scenes for that until another day and figure out something else. I think we even changed locations because it didn't look the way we thought it was going to look. So that was my little, uh, crossing paths with that film.
And then obviously you directed your first short, Double Negative.
Yes.
And what was that like? And I looked for it online and I couldn't find a copy.
No, so it's very hard to find. However, Arrow released it as an extra
I've got
on the Blu-ray of The Fury. And right. There's also a 1-hour interview with me on the Blu-ray of The Fury. So if you get the Arrow, the UK version that Arrow put out of The Fury several years ago, you'll be able to see my short film, Double Negative. And it's a 20-minute comedy about a horror movie director played by Bill Randolph, who was the chase cabbie in Dressed to Kill when Nancy Allen's in the back and they're being chased by Bobby. And when she jumps out of the cab, Bobby is walking up by the car and the cab driver opens the door and knocks Bobby down. Well, that's Bill Randolph. And he went on, and you'll notice he's wearing this tweed sort of cabbie hat. And he went on right after that. He stole that hat and then starred in Friday the 13th Part 2 wearing the same hat. And anyway, so he plays this horror film director, and I named him Alec Ealing after Alec Guinness and Ealing Comedies. And I was kind of going after an Ealing comedy sort of flavor with this film. And he's directing a horror film called Coat Hanger Massacre. And the producers are named Max and Milt. I wonder where I got those names. I couldn't have been from the Amicus boys, Max J. Rosenberg and Milton Sabatsky. Huh. And they're played by Wayne Knight, who was Newman on Seinfeld. And he was also in Jurassic Park. And he's one of the interrogists in Basic Instinct when Sharon Stone crosses her legs. And, he's been in a million things. And Bill Finley, who played the Phantom of the Paradise and played the Mad Doctor in Sisters. And they're playing these two sleazy producers, and they decide that they're going to make more money if they steal the negative and lose it and collect the insurance money. And their secretary, who also is playing the leading role in Coat Hanger Massacre, overhears this plot, and she, of course, doesn't want it to happen because she's starring in the movie, and it's going to be the end of her career. And she comes and tells the director, "You've got to do something." And so they decide to steal the negative ahead of time to protect it and put dummy negative, and then they put secret cameras up to catch them in the act, and then they blackmailed them into finishing the movie. And so it's all about saving his horror film. And it was very fun. It also had Justin Henry, who was the little boy in Kramer versus Kramer. He plays the director in flashbacks as a prodigy film student, where he's in college at the age of, like, 9, and he's like already, winning awards and stuff. And we did this little dolly shot where we go across the class and all the students, and then there's suddenly like this empty seat. Oh no, it's not empty. And we tilt down, and there's little short Justin Henry, and who's this little prodigy kid in the class. And so that was all fun. And it got into Sundance, and it actually opened. I shot it in 35 millimeter because I wanted it to play in legitimate theaters. And it played with Martin Scorsese's After Hours in Los Angeles. And it played with Emerald Forest, the John Boorman film, in New York, and got a lot of buzz at the time, got a great review in the New York Times. And that was my calling card from then on to get my directing career going with Guilty as Charged. Now, when I was doing the short, even though I wasn't working for Brian De Palma anymore, we were still in touch, and he let me use his editing room for free between projects. And of course, it had Bill Finley, there, and Bill Randolph from Dress to Kill. So there were all these sort of De Palma connections to it. And that's why it's on the Fury Blu-ray extra.
No, that must have been nice to get it on there, to be honest.
Yes,
and then
it was fantastic.
During the 80s, you were vice president of marketing at 3 different distributors. United
Yes.
Artists, Spectra Films, and then Vestron. But you got to design posters for Francois Truffaut, Paul Verhoeven, and Jean-Jacques Benet's Diva, which I remember singing in the early 80s because it got a VHS release over here, and was a trailer on the original Evil Dead.
Yes, it was basically I had made my short film Double Negative on credit cards, and I was very much in debt, and I needed a regular 9 to 5 job to pay for it. And so I ended up working in marketing at these film distributors. And because I had worked for my dad's theaters doing newspaper ads and marketing and stuff like that, I already had a pretty amazing background for a young kid. And so they and home movies had been released by United Artists Classics. So I sort of knew some of the guys there, and I called them up. I called up actually Michael Barker, who is legendary in the business because he, for decades and decades, he and Tom Bernard have been the 2 heads of Sony Classics, which have just, they've had films, every amazing art house release ever, and they're always winning the Oscars for foreign film or this, that, and the other. Anyway, he hired me as director of advertising, and I immediately started designing movie posters and started winning awards for them. I've always been a kind of a designer, and I hired artists and different things to do them. And so yeah, that was, and then I kind of got sucked into that world. And one of the people at United Artists Classics, a woman named Linda Beath, she decided to form her own distributor, and she offered me a lot more money and a bigger title, VP of marketing, and took me with her, and formed this company called Spectra Film, and our big hit was Paul Verhoeven's The Fourth Man, and I did the poster with Renee Suttendijk holding the scissors with the red background and the 2 guys looking at each other behind her, and we had some other hits, but then some other things didn't work out, and that company eventually started to not do well, and then it was going bankrupt, and then I got hired by Vestron, which was a huge video company at that time, and they were based they were not in Manhattan, they were in Stamford, Connecticut, and which was about an hour drive. It was quite a long way to commute every day, and I decided to get my husband and I to move to White Plains, which was a suburb of New York, but it was halfway there. So we could sort of be in the middle. I could commute quickly to Stamford, Connecticut, but still be able to get back into Manhattan for different things. And my husband worked in Manhattan as a hairdresser. So we moved out there. We bought a car because we never had a car in Manhattan. You don't need one because it's all public transportation. And 6 weeks after being at Vestron, they go bankrupt.
Oh.
Well, you know, it was a catastrophe at the time, but it was actually the best thing that could possibly have happened because I really had gotten sucked into that world. It was cushy. I was making really good money, but it really wasn't what I really wanted to do, which was to direct. And so it was the fire. It lit the fire under me that I have to get my directing career going. I'd laid all the groundwork. I had my short film, got all this buzz, and I wasn't milking it. I wasn't, you know, using all of that. And so I did, and finally got Guilty as Charged going and moved to Los Angeles, where I've been ever since in 1990 until now. And I've directed 55 movies, and you know, that became my life, and that's what I wanted. That's what I had dreamed of doing since I was a kid. And it took you know, 3 companies going under to kick me in the butt to do it.
But you got that start. It did after you shot. It took 5 years for your proper feature directorial debut, Guilty as Charged, and what a cast! Most of whom you'd work with again: Isaac Hayes, Erwin Keys, Rod Steigers. You must have built up quite a rapport with them. How was that experience? And you had a young Heather Graham there as well. How was that?
Yes, young Heather Graham, right off of Drugstore Cowboy, and Lauren Hutton. Oh my God. I mean, we had the most incredible cast in that movie. And also Bill Randolph, who was the cabbie in Dressed to Kill and had been the lead in my short film. He has a part in it as well. And but he's not wearing the cap. and we had Mitch Pileggi, who'd been in Shocker. And had gotten electrocuted in an electric chair, and we electrocuted him again in our electric chair, which I thought was a really cool little Easter egg. Anyway, it was the most fun, and we got to build all these, you know, German expressionistic sets, and the dungeon, and the electric chair with giant angel wings, and oh my Lord, the whole thing was just a dream come true. It was fabulous. And then the second film that I did was a Scream Queen whodunit called Acting on Impulse that starred Nancy Allen from my De Palma days. And it also had Linda Fiorentino and also a huge cast, including Isaac Hayes and Zelda Rubinstein and others that had been in my first film. And we peppered it with all sorts of Scream Queens in the movie, like Briggs Stevens and Mary Warnov, and you know, it had all sorts of stuff, but it was basically about a horror movie actress whose producer has been murdered. She is implicated, but she's actually innocent. When she's on the lam, the police are trying to find her, but she's got to solve the crime before, you know, so that she can prove her innocence. And it was great fun. And that ended up premiering on Showtime, the cable network here in America. And then I did, after that, the 2 Oblivion films that you mentioned for Charlie Band at Full Moon. We shot those in back-to-back in Romania, and it was incredible all-star cast again. We had George Takei from Star Trek, Julie Newmar from the original Catwoman on Batman. She played Miss Kitty, the feline alien runs the saloon, and she does all sorts of, you know, homages to Catwoman. Perfect and everything. And we also
secretly it's her son.
I'm sorry?
Secretly it's her son.
Yes. And George Takei, he plays the town drunk, and he comes out of the saloon. I gave him a bottle of Jim Beam, and he goes, and he looks at the bottle and goes, "Jim, beam me up." And he takes a big swig of that, and another point he does his live long and prosper or whatever. I can't do it with my fingers. And
there you go, live long and prosper.
There you go. And anyway, it was an amazing film, and Isaac Hayes was in it too. I do a cameo in both of them. I'm in the stocks in
at the start.
beginning, and then in the second one, I come into a bar or cantina where Isaac Hayes is the bartender, and it's a no smoking bar, and I'm a cowboy. I'm this badass cowboy, and I'm not paying any attention to this no smoking sign bullshit. And I start to light up a cigar, and Isaac Hayes is like, and pointing to the no smoking, and I'm like, you know, basically fuck you, and I light up, and then boom, I get shot in the back dead by Musetta Vander, who plays Lash, this dominatrix, this gorgeous leather, you know, clad dominatrix who had bought the bar, and she was enforcing the rules. And so that was my little Hitchcockian cameo in that one. And it was so much fun. And as you said, Maxwell Caulfield was in it, and Meg Foster and Carl Steiger, who was Lurch in the Addams Family movies, and the Giant on Twin Peaks, and oh my, Urban Keys. I mean, it was just those were great fun. And a De Palma connection. I got Pino Donaggio to do the score. And he had done Carrie and Dressed to Kill and Home Movies, and I had met him on the Home Movies and Dressed to Kill. And so that was incredible. And he's such an amazing composer and just had this beautiful full orchestral score and stuff. So, you know, that was great. And then, you know, I did a few other films, and then Elvira's Haunted Hills. Then I did a gay horror series called Dante's Cove. I directed all 3 seasons of that. And it was a very sexy show that we did in the first season in the Caribbean, and the other 2 seasons in Hawaii. The scenery was beautiful. The boys were beautiful. Everything was beautiful. The main witch, who was sort of the witch heading the coven, was played by Tracy Scoggins, who had been the villainess on Lois and Clark, and she had been in Dynasty and everything. And she was, you know, very glamorous, and we always had her dressed to the nines in our show. Yeah. And whenever she was interviewed and said, you know, what was your inspiration for your character in Dante's Cove? And she said, well, darling, it was a cross between Joan Collins and Barnabas Collins. And I always love that, because it really was. We were very much inspired by Dark Shadows and Queer as Folk. It was sort of a cross between those two.
Fair enough. And in between all of that, you done Out There with Billy Campbell, Billy Bob Thornton, Rod Steigers again, Jill St. John, Julie Brown, Bobcat Goldthwait, and Jennifer Connelly in a little cameo.
Yes, it was incredible. It was a little... it was a UFO comedy that
it's great fun.
I had so much fun doing that, and literally everybody's in it. Paul Dooley, Julie Brown, the list goes on. Lockhart, you know, everywhere you turn, it's a familiar face. I mean, I don't think I cast anybody in it that wasn't somebody. And like you said, we had 2 Oscar winners in the cast. We had Billy Bob Thornton and Rod Steiger, and our lead, Billy Campbell, who had played the Rocketeer. If you recall, his leading lady in Rocketeer was Jennifer Connelly, and they became an item during the shooting of that film. They fell in love. Well, they were still together when we were doing Out There, and Jennifer Connelly would come and visit all the time and be on the set. And we were shooting a grocery store scene, and we didn't have enough extras. They didn't show up or whatever. And I said, Jennifer, come over. You and I will be extras in line behind Bill Campbell and Julie Brown, and we'll just play a couple. And so she ran over, and so we're in there if you look really hard, but, you know, there's no lines or anything. But that was my 3rd Oscar winner in the movie, Jennifer Connelly.
That's it, Jennifer Connelly. And then you done a bit for Disney, time travel pirate fantasy, Magic Island.
Yes.
With French Stewart. That'll have been fun working for Disney.
It was so much fun. It wasn't really for Disney. It was actually for Charlie Band at Full Moon, but he had a kids film division called Moonbeam,
Yeah.
and we shot it in Mexico. And then it ended up getting sold to the Disney Channel, and they played the hell out of it. It was really popular on there. When I go to convention appearances, I'm telling you, that is one of the most popular films that people know when they come up to talk to me. It's like Elvirashauntedhills is the number one thing that people want to talk about. Um, Gods and Monsters, which I was one of the producers of, is a big
Yeah.
popular one. The Oblivion films, Guilty as Charged, and Dante's Cove. But Magic Island is right up there. I mean, that was one of those films that monster kids saw at a really young, impressionable age, and it was one of those things that they remember. And it's a beloved film. And like you said, it had French Stewart, who was really popular at the time from Third Rock from the Sun. And it also had Andrew Divoff, who had played Red Eye, the villain in the Oblivion films. He was playing Blackbeard, the pirate. And it was, pirates and time travel and stop motion animation of a stone giant, very Harryhausen inspired. It just has a little of everything, and it was so much fun to do. It was just great. What was great about working with Charlie Band is that he would send me off to these exotic locations in Romania and in this case Mexico, and he never visited the set. I never saw him once. He trusted me. He let me do what I was going to do. And at that time, he had a deal with Paramount, who was helping to finance his films, and there was actually budgets. There was actually money. Many of the years that he's produced movies, they're made on literally, a dime. We had budgets, and so I was really, really lucky to work with him right in that narrow sliver of time. But I'm so grateful to him to just let me do the films that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was just fantastic.
I mean, you even directed several segments in Super Bowl 34.
Yes, I did. I got hired by this company. I mean, look, I'm gay. I don't have the sports gene. I don't even, if you ask me what the Super Bowl is, I'm like, is that a bowling league? What is that? I mean, I know nothing. But I directed the opening to the Super Bowl one year, and I did, I did the 100th anniversary of the World Series. I did the opening to that. I mean, it was just so crazy. But the openings really didn't have a whole lot to do with sports. Like the opening for the 100th anniversary of the World Series, it was basically a music video with Sheila E. And her in costumes and different sets for each decade of the 100 years, and it was a song that she had composed for the event. And for the Super Bowl, we shut down Bourbon Street and staged our own parade. It was probably the most expensive scene I've ever done in my life. It cost millions of dollars, um, and had a dueling musicians in the intersection and stuff. It was amazing stuff. I was just incredibly amazed that they hired me to do it. But anyway, I did.
And then after all of that, we get to Elvira's Haunted Hills.
Yes.
And you've obviously discussed how you got the director's role of that. And I mean, Richard O'Brien as well.
Yes, Richard O'Brien. Can you imagine?
I
mean, Richard O'Brien is playing the Vincent Price character. He plays Lord Helzibus, the weirdo in the castle, who has all of the afflictions. He has super hearing. He has super senses of smell, and all the things that Vincent Price's characters had in each of those Poe films. The sensitivity to light, has to wear the horse blinder glasses like in Tomb of Ligeia, everything. He has them all. And he knew all of the Vincent Price movies as well. And it was such so between, he was a big Vincent Price fan. So was Elvira, and Cassandra had gotten to know Vincent very well. So we ended up dedicating the film to Vincent Price, and it was not, it was a heartfelt dedication, let me tell you. I mean, we all just revered the guy. And it was so much fun. And we had Mary Shear, who was on Mad TV, and just an amazing cast of people. I had gotten a friend of mine, Scott Atkinson, to come and audition for the role of Dr. Bradley Bradley, and he was just ended up being really hilarious in the film, and doing this George Sanders accent. I had heard him do George Sanders at a party, and when he came into audition, he did the scene just in his regular voice, and I said, let's do it again, and I want you to do it in your George Sanders voice this time. And he did. And Cassandra and I both fell out of our chairs, and we were like, that's it. You have to do it in the movie. So
Yeah.
he's doing George Sanders the whole time. Now, at the little spoiler alert, he turns out to be a charlatan in the end, and he goes into his character's normal voice, which is supposed to be Cockney. He's a much lower class than George Sanders. And so Scott said, well, I do a really great Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins. How about that? And of course, that's, famous for being probably
Bad.
the worst Cockney accent ever in the history of film. But we just thought it was hilarious. We've got to do that. And so he becomes Dick Van Dyke in Mary Poppins.
Right. Maybe you can think this for me. When is it set? Because it's a sequel to the original.
No, it's not. It is. It's the second Elvira movie, but it is really a standalone. It's set in the 1800s, the 1860s in Transylvania, and we don't explain anything. We don't explain how she got there. It's just we just dropped her into an Edgar Allan Poe, Roger Corman movie. And she and her French maid, they're on their way to Paris because she's going to be in a show called Yes, I Can, as a can dancer or something. Just like in the first Elvira movie, where she's on her way to Vegas to be in a Vegas act.
That's right.
And so they they end up at this castle for the weekend, and everything that could go wrong goes wrong. And it's just a hoot. And, so unfortunately, there were no more Elvira films after that, and we very much wanted there to be. And I always wanted. I just felt like the character could be dropped into any genre. You could have her in a Godzilla movie. You could have her in a Frankenstein movie. You could have her in a Queen of Outer Space movie. I wanted, and she hosted horror movies. And so I always felt like, she should be dropping her character into all of the various genres of horror movies that she would be hosting. And that was my dream. Now, she felt that the first movie did so well because it was Elvira as a fish out of water in modern day America with, being, around quote unquote, regular people and them reacting to her. And yes, that was hilarious. And I think it's an absolutely hilarious film and everything. But I just felt, Cassandra felt like, she needed to kind of continue on that sort of vein. And, but anyway, the films never happened. The financing, never got together. And even on Elvirashauntedhills, Hills, she had to put up the money herself. She and her husband at the time, they're divorced now. But they mortgaged their house and, paid for it themselves. And it didn't get good distribution in the beginning. So it just, they really took a bath on that. And so, she was of the mind that, if I do a third Elvira film, it better pay me a lot of money and, guarantee me a lot of money because I've lost a lot of money doing these movies. And her deal on the first movie wasn't all that great. And so, yeah, she has kind of a bad taste in her mouth on the finances, on the financial end of those two movies. But at any rate, it was, for me, it was the most fun of any of the movies I've ever done. I mean, it was just that dream come true of being able to do this Vincent Price movie. And and we built all the sets in Romania. And I convinced her, she had originally thought she'd go over to Romania and shoot in real castles. And I had already shot in Romania with Oblivion, and I knew the country. I knew I had gone and toured on days off. I'd gone and toured all the castles and stuff. And I knew that there were two kinds of castles there: a museum with velvet ropes and everything polished and all beautiful and priceless antiques everywhere. And that wasn't going to work for the set. It looked too fancy and beautiful, and they weren't going to let us come in there because it was too many expensive things, and they'd have to shut down their tourism, and we wouldn't have been able to afford to pay them enough money to make it worthwhile. And we would have had to take away the velvet ropes and the paths of red carpets and, all that kind of stuff. So that wasn't going to work. The other kinds of castles were total ramshackle. They were, they smelled of, homeless people in there pissing, and there was
Yeah.
graffiti on the walls, and there was no running water and no heat and no air conditioning and no, and the dirt roads up the mountain to get there had been washed out from floods, and you couldn't even get there. I mean, so yeah, I completely talked her out of it, and I said, "Look, Roger Corman didn't go to castles on those early ones,
No, no.
and we should embrace the artifice of it and build the interiors as sets, and the exterior should be a matte shot or a model, and everything." And that's what we ended up doing, and just embracing that look, and which I thought was more fairy tale anyway. And I'm so glad we did, because it was just great. I could then build the sets to specification. I mean, literally,
Yeah.
that in the Pendulum set is the most incredible set. When I walked in and saw what they had done, um, from the bottom of the pit to these incredible ceilings, and they had painted Hieronymus Bosch murals on the wall. Oh my God, I broke into tears. It was just incredible.
And what's the story with Fabio? Because he was going to be playing the
Yeah.
Hulk, and then you got a
The
local guy
stable,
who had to be dubbed.
yes, the stable stud. We originally, the idea was that we were going to get Fabio, who was the model who posed for,
Yeah.
romance novels, who had the long hair and was kind of famous at that time and would do kind of jokey appearances every now and then and do commercials and things. And well, he wasn't, I don't know what happened. Either wasn't available, or he didn't get it, or he wanted too much money, or whatever. It wasn't going to work out. And at that point, we were already bringing over several actors, and it was a budgetary thing. We were like, it's probably a blessing in disguise that we don't have to bring over yet another person for this fairly small role. Um, why don't we just, we'll be able to find somebody in Romania. We'll cast it in Romania. So we get over there, and my big thing was I wanted an actor who did have long hair. I thought the long hair was going to be right for the era, and it was sort of that romance cover cliche or trope, and I didn't want to have to use a wig, because wigs always look very wiggy and terrible, and we didn't have the budget to get a truly expensive, wig
Yeah.
that might pass okay. We would end up with, something that would look like a dead squirrel. And so they started bringing in different guys who had long hair, and the ones who could speak English weren't good looking enough. And the one, and then a couple of ones that were pretty good looking couldn't speak English, and we were like, oh, what are we going to do? Well, then finally this guy, Gabriel Andranaki, I will never forget it, walked into the room, and Cassandra and I both, our jaws dropped. It was like a Tex Avery cartoon, where our eyes sort of popped out of our heads, our tongues, roll out to the floor. He just was so gorgeous, and he had this beautiful long hair, and we're drooling. Um, and he starts to do the scene, and he can't speak a word of English. And we try to help him do it phonetically, and it's just completely hopeless. And I turned to Cassandra and I said, wait a minute. What if we embrace this? What if we just let him do the part in Romanian and then we dub it really badly, like the Hercules movies, those old Italian Hercules movies where they post dub everything and you can see the lips are not moving correctly to what they're saying or whatever. And she thought that was the funniest idea. And so that's what we ended up doing. Now, once we got into it, we were a little nervous because we were like, is this kind of a one joke thing where it'll get a laugh the first time? But he had several scenes and we just thought, is it going to get old? But I'm telling you, it is the funniest thing when we go, every time we screen the movie, people are in hysterics every time that scene comes on, and especially seeing it in an audience where the laughter is infectious. People just go crazy, and it got to the point where literally it would, if he just showed up, people started laughing even before he opened his mouth because they couldn't wait for him to open his mouth. So it was great.
No,
It was
it is.
just,
It's a very funny film. Very enjoyable. I've watched it quite a few times.
oh,
Watched
that's
it
so
again
great.
while I was doing research. Because I watched a few of your films while I was doing research and things. So yeah, I watched Guilty of Charged, as Charged,
Oh,
Elvira, Out There. So yeah, watched the good and the Oblivion films as well.
oh my
Um,
gosh, thank you.
you and Cassandra both have a love for Ryuichi Sakamoto and the soundtrack of
Merry
Merry
Christmas, Mr.
Christmas, Mr.
Lawrence.
Lawrence.
I know we have a lot of Cassandra and I, we're almost separated at birth because we're both redheads, we both have blue eyes, we both love Vincent Price. My seminal film at the age of 5 was Pit and the Pendulum. Hers was House on Haunted Hill. That was the first horror film she saw. And so many things in common. And when we were shooting Elvira's Haunted Hills, I come into her dressing room and she's listening to the Joni Mitchell's album that came out around 2000. That was it was a symphonic album with a full orchestra doing new orchestral arrangements of some of her songs, like um, oh gosh, now I'm going blank, um, but some of her most beautiful songs, of Joni Mitchell's songs.
Yeah.
And Cassandra was playing this, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the album that I've been playing to death. I absolutely love it. And we bonded over that, and she used it as sort of a soothing sort of thing to sort of be able to unwind at the end of the day when she was taking her makeup off, but also when she was putting on her makeup to just sort of have a soothing, quiet, time before the chaos of the day. But we also discovered that we both loved the theme to Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence by Ryuichi Sakamoto. And lots of other things too, musically. Just we're so in sync about that stuff. So every now and then we're sending each other songs that we think both of us will like. And I just recently, I just had a feeling that Cassandra would love The Substance, the Demi Moore movie. And I went to visit her. She lives in Portland, Oregon now. And I went to visit her and I said, Cassandra, I'm taking you to see The Substance. And she's like, well, I've heard mixed things. I don't know. And I said, I'm taking you. Well, she flipped over it. She just thought it was absolutely amazing. And then I did the same thing with Godzilla Minus One, which is one of the films that I've flipped over in recent years,
What a
and she loved
film.
that too.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. So we're in sync about everything, it seems like.
No, you mentioned Godzilla Minus One there. Fantastic film.
Yes.
Went to see it on the cinema when it was on over here. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. One of my films of that year.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah.
I saw it 5 times in the cinema, including they re-released it during its run with the black and white version, the alternate version. And I went and saw that too. And I just, that movie blew me away. And I mean, this is going to be anathema to some listeners, but I honestly wasn't a big Godzilla fan as a kid. I can appreciate it to a certain degree, but I was a Harryhausen guy. I liked the stop
Yeah.
motion. I liked the magic that was created with those models more than I did a guy in a suit with slow motion, kicking around model, buildings. And it didn't speak to me as a kid. And so I found them kind of silly. And I was never, it didn't have the fairy tale quality that the original King Kong did,
Yeah.
and all of those great Harryhausen films. Um, so when I've seen most of the Godzilla movies, and I've seen the recent ones and everything, but I did, I was never really a diehard fan. I I got a call from a friend who said, "You got to go see Godzilla minus one," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'll see it." No, you really need to see it. So I did, and oh my God,
Yeah.
it was it was incredible. I mean, in my opinion, it is not only the greatest Godzilla movie ever, but like by 1,000 miles. I mean, I just thought it was unbelievably great.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see what else this director does. I know he's working on a sequel. I hear, and so I'm excited to see what happens with that.
Oh, definitely. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm a big Godzilla fan, though. I like the old
Yeah, I'm
ones.
sorry. I
No,
don't mean
it's
to
all
hurt your
right.
feelings.
It's all right. You can't see behind me, but it's just a shelf of Godzilla figures
Oh my goodness. That's
right the span
fantastic.
of the room. Yeah, from the latest massive one that I just bought,
Yeah.
to I've got, yeah, little ones, big ones, you name it. Godzilla and Doctor Strange are all over us.
That
Um,
is so great.
but there we go. I'm a bit of a Godzilla shadow. I do like him.
Yeah, well, I'm in the minority among monster kids. I feel bad. But it was just, we
No,
all
hey, don't feel bad. It is what it is. You know what I mean? We can't all like everything.
that's right. That's right.
Now, how did you coming on as a producer on Gods and Monsters come about and
Well,
working with
I
Bill
had
Condon?
read there was a book called Father of Frankenstein by Chris Bram, and it was all about James Whale in his later years, as when he had, he was of course the director of Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, Invisible Man, Old Dark House, and he was openly gay. And in his retirement, he became an artist at his home, and uh, and the book just went into this very lovely relationship that he develops with this very beautiful straight gardener, and asks him to pose for his artwork. And they, in talking during the artist sessions, they realize they have so much in common, and develop this very lovely friendship. And the book was very moving to me. I thought it was incredibly beautiful. And there was also flashbacks of James Whale, directing Bride of Frankenstein, which I, of course, was drawn to. I thought that
Yeah,
was great. And so got in touch with this writer. I had, didn't know him from Adam. And I said, "Listen, I don't have any money, but if you would let me kind of have a free option on the book for a few months, I'd love to see if I could show it around and see if we could maybe get a film going." And he said, "Well, I would have considered it, except a guy named Bill Condon has beat you to the punch a couple of weeks ago, and he optioned it." And and I said, "Oh, wow, that's congratulations. That's exciting." And I had met Bill Condon because he had written a couple of films that Nancy Allen had been in. And I had met Bill at a couple of Nancy's parties. And I called up Nancy and got Bill's number, called him up and congratulated him. And I said, "Have you thought of Ian McKellen for the role?" And he goes, "Oh my God, we're on the same wavelength. I just sent a copy of the book to Ian McKellen's agents, and I'm hoping that they'll get it to him and hoping to hear back from him." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I hope that works out. That'd be great." And Bill said, I'm probably going to take a year to write the script. and everything. But you know, and I said, well, if there's anything that I can do, I'm a huge fan, and I just want to see this happen. And so then I didn't hear anything, and I figured, okay, well, I hope it gets made. Great. Then I was at Regent Entertainment, which was Paul Collishman's company. They later formed Here TV, and I made my series Dante's Code with them. But for Paul Collishman at different companies, I had made you know, Guilty as Charged and Out There and different things. But anyway, I was there prepping to direct Kiss of a Stranger. That it was a film that I wrote and directed with Mariel Hemingway, Diane Cannon, David Carradine, and Corbin Burnson. And I was in an office at Regent Entertainment, and I heard Paul mention Father of Frankenstein in the hallway in a conversation he was having with someone else. And I jumped up out of my desk and ran out there, and he goes, and I said, what is this about Father of Frankenstein? He said, well, this guy Bill Condon has written a script. He's submitted it to us. He has Ian McKellen attached, and we're thinking about doing the movie. And I said, no, you're not thinking about doing the movie. You have to do the movie, and I have to work on it, and it just has to happen. And Paul said, well, the only thing that we're concerned about is that we're just worried that it might get misinterpreted, that it's like a dirty old man coming on to a young, beautiful, straight guy. And I said, Paul, just hold on. Wait a day. I'm going to bring in my file of reviews of the book tomorrow. And I came in and I had reviews from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, you know, all these major sources on the book. And I said, you find anywhere in these reviews, anybody who has the problem that you're worried about, and he read all the reviews, and he said, you're right. I'm overthinking it. Paul is also gay, and I think we're all, you know, being gay. When you're gay and been discriminated against your whole life, your mind immediately goes to, okay, how are they going to attack us? And I think that's what was happening. I think he was letting, you know, he was over extrapolating a negativity onto it. And so anyway, they did get the financing together. It's a very convoluted story of how it all happened. You know, there were so many hurdles, so many obstacles, but it finally ended up getting released by Lionsgate. And they were not really spending a lot of money on it. They were just going to open in a couple of theaters in New York and LA, and the ads were fairly small. And they had released earlier that year a film, and I can't remember the name of it, but it had John Hurt as an older gay man who was having a friendship with the actor from Beverly Hills 90210. And that had not done well, and we were wondering, oh gosh, they probably think this is just another one of those, and they're not supporting it with much ad dollars. And so luckily, by some karmic thing, that was the week that the award season kicked off. And back then, maybe still now, the first awards that are announced are the National Board of Review. And the National Board of Review announced their best picture of the year was Gods and Monsters. Their best actor of the year was Ian McKellen for Gods and Monsters. Their best supporting actress of the year was Lynn Redgrave for Gods and Monsters. Their best director of the year was Bill Condon for Gods and Monsters. And their best screenplay of the year was Bill Condon for Gods and Monsters. It swept the whole awards. Well, that changed everything. Suddenly Lionsgate realizes, oh my God, we've got an award season darling. And they were embarrassed and forced into having to spend money and doing an award season campaign. And, you know, it got a golden, you know, it got nominated for several Golden Globes, and Lynn Redgrave ended up winning for supporting actress. It got nominated for 3 Oscars for Ian McKellen, for Lynn Redgrave, and for Best Screenplay. And it won Best Screenplay, which was an incredible triumph. And you know, became a successful art house kind of movie. And I'm just so thrilled and proud to have been just a tiny part of it as a co-executive producer. I was on set every day, and David Scull, the late great David Scull, who was this wonderful scholar on Dracula and Bram Stoker and horror films and everything. He's written many and amazing books and everything. He and I teamed up to direct a making of documentary on the making of the film that we were wanted that it was going to be part of the extras when it would come out on home entertainment. But we also made the documentary about a history of James Whale, and we interviewed people that had worked with him and knew him, like Curtis Harrington and the woman who from Titanic, who was what's her name, Gloria Stewart, who was in The Invisible Man and Old Dark House, and was the older woman in Titanic, of course. We interviewed her. She was still alive at that time, and interviewed Clyde Barker, who was one of our executive producers on the movie as well. And so it was a really wonderful little documentary that you can see on any of the home video releases of the film.
And you've wrote quite a few books as well. Frankenstein: The True Story.
Yes,
that started as a special in Little Shop of Horrors, and then kind of bloomed into this.
It's a saga. I mean, I fell in love with Frankenstein: The True Story. It was the two-part NBC Frankenstein movie from 1973. All-star cast: James Mason, Leonard Whiting played Dr. Frankenstein, Michael Sarrazin played the creature, Jane Seymour plays the female creature, David McCallum, Agnes Moorehead, Sir Ralph Richardson, Sir John Gielgud, Tom Baker. Everybody's in it. And it just blew me away. I thought it was the most fabulous Frankenstein movie next to Bride of Frankenstein ever. And I put it on the cover of my fanzine in 1974, Bazaar. And then many years later, Richard Clemenson, who was the editor of Little Shop of Horrors magazine, he knew, we've known each other ever since we started our fanzines. We both started our fanzines in the same year, 1972. He knew how much I loved the film. And one of his regular cover artists, Mark Maddox, had said, listen, I am a huge fan of Frankenstein: A True Story. I want to paint a cover for the magazine, so you need to cover that movie. And so Richard Clemenson called me and asked me if I would write it. And I said, boy, would I, but you have to give me the whole issue. I have so much to say about this movie. And so he did. He gave me the keys to the castle, and I took over the whole issue. Normally the issues were 100 pages. We expanded it to 120 pages, and then we got Mark Maddox to do this incredible 3-panel mural, which I have the original art framed in our house, and this is it. And did this magnificent issue on Frankenstein: The True Story. And it won the Rondo Award for Best Article of the Year, which I was incredibly proud of. Now, this led to me doing the extras for the Blu-ray restoration that Shout Factory did. And the extras were produced by Constantine Nasser, who also writes a lot for Little Shop of Horrors. And in fact, right at this time, he did a whole issue on the Frank Langella Dracula that is one of his favorite films. And so Constantine knew how much I loved Frankenstein: The True Story, and when he got the contract from Shout Factory to do the extras for it, he called me up and said, well, this is your baby. I'm just here to help in any way I can. And so I interviewed Jane Seymour on camera. I got this co-screenwriter, Don Bacardi, to be interviewed on camera. And then I paid my own way to go to London. I had to have Leonard Whiting. Got an interview with him to be on there. And then I did the 3-hour audio commentary, because the movie is 3 hours. And ended up winning a Rondo Award for Best Audio Commentary. So then all of that, you would think I had enough to say about it. No, I had so much more. I had to cut out so much stuff that I couldn't fit into the magazine or the Blu-ray. And so for the 50th anniversary of the film, 2023, I decided, all right, I am going to go all out, and I am doing this giant cinder block on
Coffee
the
table
movie
book
for the
looks
50th
lovely.
anniversary, and it's the epic saga behind Frankenstein: The True Story. It's only it's only, it's good for weightlifting. It's only 400 pages, 400 color pages with 1,500 photos. And we got Mark Maddox, who had done the mural. We got him to do a whole new artwork. He'd also did new artwork for the Blu-ray cover as well. And it even expands to the back. It's a double panel. And I got Anne Rice to, before she passed away, to write the foreword, because it's the film that inspired her to write Interview with the Vampire.
Right.
And I'm so proud that I also got Guillermo del Toro to write the afterword, because it's one of his favorite films, and it's one of the films that has inspired his brand new Frankenstein film that's coming out in November. I'm literally counting the seconds. I cannot freaking wait. But this book, even if you know nothing about this movie, you really do need to get introduced to this movie. But if you're a fan of this movie, I mean, this is the ultimate book. And if the saga behind the making of this movie you can't even believe what happened. I mean, so many people were dying to do the script was by the great Christopher Isherwood, who wrote the Berlin stories that Cabaret is based on, and his lover Don Bacardi, who's a world famous portrait artist. The two of them wrote this script. They infused as much gay subtext into it as they could possibly get away with under the radar. The producer, Hunt Stromberg Jr., was gay, and he was fanning the flames of it. They called themselves the Lavender Hill Mob, trying to gay up the movie as much as NBC and the censors would allow. And it's the whole saga of this is unbelievable. Well, the script started being shown around town, and Francis Ford Coppola, in the wake of The Godfather, his biggest film, Oscar-winning, everything else, there was nothing more in life than him wanting to direct Frankenstein: The True Story. He begged Universal to let him do it, and they wouldn't, because he'd gone $1 million over budget on The Godfather. He said he would only do it if they would promote it to being a theatrical release instead of a television film. But they already had a contract with NBC, and that wasn't going to happen. And so they turned down Francis Ford Coppola in the wake of The Godfather. He was going to have Marlon Brando play Dr. Polidori. I mean, it was just absolutely crazy stuff. At one point, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton were going to be in it. Then John Borman, in the wake of Deliverance, Oscars, everything, he begged to do this movie. I have the letter that I have in here of the passionate letter that he wrote to the head of Universal, begging them to let him do it. But it was the same situation where he wanted it to be a theatrical film. They didn't want to go that way. They also worried he was going to spend too much money. And so they ended up hiring Jack Smite, who was a great director, but he was, a little bit, he did a lot more TV experience. Yeah. They knew he was controllable. They knew he would stay on budget. They knew he'd be disciplined. And they made a great film. It's an absolutely great film.
Was it co-financed by the BBC as well?
No, the BBC did run it.
Yeah, they did run it.
But it wasn't. It was all financed by Universal,
right?
And it did get, it played on NBC 2 nights with commercials. So it was 2 hours one night, 2 hours another night. But when you cut out all the commercials, It ended up being a 3-hour movie. And then Universal released it to theaters in England and in Spain and a few other countries in a horrific, butchered 2-hour version. I mean, you're missing a third of the movie. I mean, it was incomprehensible. It was absolutely awful. And that's its first exposure in England was when it opened at the Paramount Theatre in London in 1974. And it didn't do well, and the reviews were terrible. Rightfully so. It was a mess. But then there was so much outcry that people in England had not gotten to see the full version. And I mean, this is a movie that was made in England and Penguin
Yeah.
Studios and all these great British actors and everything else. So BBC got smart and they licensed it, and they showed it in 1975 at around Christmas time, or maybe it was even New Year's, I forget. And they showed it all in one night, the whole 3 hours, and it got reassessed and got rave reviews, and people finally saw it for what it was. Now, it kind of went under the radar then after that, because home video was starting to become popular in the late 70s, and only when they had video cassettes. I mean, this, you have to remember, this is a TV movie. When video cassettes started, they had a lot of theatrical films that they had to put on video cassettes. They had a huge library of every studio, and they had plenty of product that hadn't come out on video yet. They weren't about to start worrying about TV movies, for Christ's sake. But when it finally did come out on a video cassette, a small fly-by-night company got the rights to it. And if they were going to do the full 3-hour version, they would have had to do a package of 2 video cassettes, and they weren't going to do that. So they just put out the horrible, butchered 2-hour version. And so that's what, when people said, "Oh, I saw it on video," no, you didn't. You saw that awful 2-hour version. And so it really, its reputation kind of soured, and people thought they were seeing the whole thing when they weren't. And not until 2004, when Universal finally put out the full 3-hour version on DVD, did people start rediscovering it. But even then, it really didn't get fully rediscovered until I started pounding the drums with the Little Shop of Horrors, and then with Shout Factory putting out this beautiful restoration with all the extras, and then my book. So I am taking credit that some of the renaissance and rediscovery of this movie was because of some of the hard work that I put into this.
And then with your writing, we mentioned I Was a Teenage Monster Hunter, but we've got to mention Captain Camouflage and the Franken Scam.
Well, I did a little parody of those little Golden Book storybooks, and this is it. It's Captain Camouflage and the Franken-Sam Scam. And basically, I love camouflage, and I wear it a lot, and some of my friends started to nickname me Captain Camouflage. And when I'm directing a movie, I always have a couple of fashion days where, I'll say, okay, on Friday, let's do Hawaiian Shirt Day, and then the following week, let's do Camouflage Day. I always do a Camouflage Day, and then I will dress in full-on camouflage with the captain's hat and all, and so film crews call me Captain Camouflage. And I suddenly thought, you know what? I'm going to lean into this and turn myself into an alter ego superhero, a queerdo superhero called Captain Camouflage, and just make it this whole parody thing. So you can see it's just got all these amazing cartoons by Dan Gallagher, who's the most incredible cartoonist. He and I both love Looney Tunes and Mad Magazine and Jack Davis and the Frank Frazetta when he's doing his caricatures. Oh my God, how fabulous. That's so cool. And this won 2 Rondo Awards for Best Graphic Book of the Year, and also for Fan Artist of the Year for Dan Gallagher. So we're so proud of that. And so we did up this little gold sticker there that goes right on the cover and fits in my opened hand, like I'm flashing a police badge or something. And we also made a special bookmark and that Dan and I have signed each and every one of them individually.
Nice.
And it's two-sided. It has Frank and Sam on one side and Captain Sam Flage on the other. And then this sticker comes like that. And then we did a picture of us getting our awards. This is just in June. I mean, it's like this just happened last month. And then on the back, us at my table where I'm dressed as Captain Camouflage, and there's Dan, and we've got our awards in the front. And then Dan, as a surprise for me, for this convention just last month, he drew. Remember the Jack Davis? Well, you guys might not.
Yeah.
But there was this 6-foot Jack Davis caricature of Frankenstein monster that was advertised in Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine back in the late 60s and early 70s. And, you know, all of us American monster kids had these hanging on our doors because it was a big door panel. Well, anyway, this is the ad that would appear at that time. Well, Dan did this spoof of it with Frank and Sam, you know, wrapped in a fabulous leopard, you know, robe that figures into the story in the book. And his is, you know, this, what does he call it? It's instead of over 6 feet tall, this is over 6 inches tall. and and I just think it's absolutely incredible. So I printed these up on a card, and both of these cards, the bookmark and the sticker to go on your book, I am offering these for the incredible price of free. You heard correctly, absolutely free. If you want these, you just have to send me your address on Facebook Messenger, private messenger, or DM on Instagram. Just send me your mailing address and I will send these to you for free anywhere in the world. You don't have to pay postage. You don't have to pay anything. I know you don't, there's nothing in this world happens free anymore, people. This is free. And it's basically our thank you to everybody supporting the book and voting for us for the awards, and basically a promotion that if you don't have the book, maybe this will encourage you to do that.
Exactly. And it's available on Amazon for us British people.
It is. It's available on Amazon worldwide. It's in paperback like this. It's also available as an ebook, and it's also available as an audiobook. But if you get the audiobook, first of all, you're going to get the full experience because you'll hear me narrating it, and I have some guest voices on there as well. But you got to have the artwork. You got to be able to flip through. So let the audiobook be a story time to narrate it for you as you flip through the book. And it's just got everything. Peter Lorre, we cast Peter Lorre as the sleazy producer. And so I have a friend of mine who does an incredible Peter Lorre accent or impression. And Doug Mackey is his name. He's British. I met him actually he was a social media friend, but I met him in person when I was a guest at Darkfest just a couple years ago. And we talked, and he did his Peter Lorre voice for me. And I'm like, oh my God, you're going to be the voice on the audiobook for this. And so that he's on here. And anyway, I'm just so thrilled about it. And it's been really popular and fun. And by the way, I play 3 characters in it. You know, there's no narcissism or ego or anything.
No, not at all.
Not at all. I play myself, a film director named Sam. I am directing a movie called Wham Bam Frankensam, sort of a gay Frankenstein. And I am playing the lead character of Frankensam. So, that is me as well, the Frankensam character. And then the sleazy producer, Peter Lorre, his character name is Max Million. It's actually it's actually a little bit of spoofing David Zaslav at Warner Brothers, who, if you recall, buried a couple of films, Batgirl and a couple of Looney Tunes movies, for tax write-offs, and not allow anyone to ever see those films that are completed after, tens of millions of dollars been spent, and hundreds and if not thousands of people's hard work went into these movies. And it's just like, Tax write-off. Well, I'm sorry. The villain in this is based on him. And, he may be able to get away with it through legal loopholes, but morally, I think it's reprehensible.
Of course it
And
is.
so basically, the Peter Lorre villainous, producer wants to bury my film, Wham Bam Franken-Sam, for a tax write-off, and I'm not going to let him do it. So, but I don't have enough courage to stand up to him, so I have to turn myself into my alter ego superhero, Captain Camouflage, to take care of the problem. So that's what basically the story is all about. And
It's a
let me
great
just
fun
say one
read.
more thing,
Yeah.
and then you can get a word in edgewise.
I've hardly said a word.
I know. Believe me, I know. This is the risk that you take when you interview me.
That's fine.
We are. I'm totally teasing. We are already working on the sequel. We're so happy, and the next one
Brilliant.
is called Captain Camouflage and the Count Samula Space Case. And yes, in that one, I will be playing Count Samula, and there's vampires in space, and it's even kookier than this one. So look for that. That'll be out next year in 2026. Okay,
Excellent.
I'll let you talk for a second or two.
You mentioned winning the rondos. I have a rondo. Well,
oh my God, it's fantastic! Congratulations.
I was part of the team that We Belong Dead that won the special recognition for the Japanese special.
For the Japanese double issue.
Yeah. I done the Godzilla stuff in there.
That is so incredible! Congratulations! That was an amazing issue. If you haven't gotten it, folks, it's We Belong Dead. It was 2 separate issues, and it has this incredible cover. That oh gosh, he's going to kill me. What's the guy's name?
I can't think who done it.
Oh God, I love him to death too. He's a wonderful friend.
No.
What is it?
Sam Riles? No. No, I can't think.
Oh, I wish I could think of his name.
Alex
anyway,
no, I can't think.
Wait, I'm going to take the second because he did artwork on the Frankenstein issue, and it'll be right here.
Right.
He will absolutely kill me if I don't credit him properly. Oh my goodness. Oh. Paul Watts.
Paul Watts. There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. It's an excellent double cover.
I'm so sorry, Paul. He did the 2 covers, which when you put the magazines together has a big red sun or whatever in the center, and it's just the most beautiful artwork. But then they put out a book that collected the 2 together, and then the cover of the book is the wraparound of that beautiful artwork. It's really spectacular. So congratulations to everybody involved in that. And by the way, the graphic designer for all the We Belong Dead books and magazines is Steve Kirkham, who, guess what? He designs all my books. And I Was a Teenage Monster Hunter and Captain Camouflage. He does all of these things. And my latest book that I'm working on right now, just finishing it up, it's going to come out late August, early September-ish, is a memoir that picks up right after, I've talked about one day after the Famous Monsters Convention. This book ends with the Famous Monsters Convention, and this next book starts the day after, and the book is called Confessions of a Brian De Palma Protege, How I Shadowed the Director on The Fury, Dressed to Kill, and more. And Steve Kirkham is designing it. And Dan Gallagher, the artist here, and Dan Gallagher also did this incredible spoof of the Fearless Vampire Killers poster, which has me in the coffin being chased by Vincent Price and Christopherlee and everything. Anyway, Dan is right now working on the cover for the De Palma book, and I've seen the preliminary sketches, and it is going to blow you away.
I meant to ask about Dressed to Kill as well. That must have been wonderful working on a set with Michael Caine and You know what I mean?
Incredible. Oh
Keith
my God. Let me
Gordon
tell you a
again.
story about Michael Caine. All right. I mean, it is a spoiler. I'm sorry, but the movie's been out for,
Oh God, yeah.
almost 50 years. Um, so most people know that that Michael Caine turns out to be the cross-dressing serial killer with the razor,
That's it.
nicknamed Bobby throughout the movie. When you're seeing the woman with blonde hair and the big sunglasses and the razor and everything, it's finally revealed at the end that it's Michael Caine. Well, Brian De Palma was terrified that, people would recognize Michael Caine if he was playing that character throughout the movie. And so he hired an actress who had some of the same facial features of his. They were the same height. Her name is Susanna Clem. But to blur it a little bit, he had a prosthetic nose that was molded on Michael Caine, and so her nose matches Michael's. But she's got on the big sunglasses and the
Yeah.
hair, and it's shadowy and everything. And so it's, it's somewhat. I mean, really, when I look at shots of her, there are many times when I'm like, man, she really does kind of look like Michael Caine there. But at the end, when it's revealed that it's really him, in the scene with Nancy Allen in his office, of course, he has to play it at that point. And so on that day, he walks onto the set in drag with the wig and everything, and the whole crew just kind of goes silent, and everybody, is holding we all wanted to kind of giggle, but we were afraid, we didn't want to insult him or be, and he knew that there was a lot of tension and people didn't know what to do or anything. And so this is how he broke the ice. He said, well, I figured if I'd been in this business long enough, I'd get to play me mum. And everybody cracked up laughing. It totally put everybody at ease. And it was the perfect thing. I'm telling you, Michael Caine, I absolutely worship the ground that guy walks on. He was the nicest person. He was the most professional person. He was just everything about him. He never was a problem. He was so chill and so zen about everything. And if there was any question, he would be very delicate in the way that he would ask the question in an incredibly polite way. And he was always very deferential to Nancy, and she was, in a very vulnerable place with practically half naked in her, lingerie and everything. And he was very, very gentle in the way that he handled her in those scenes. And he would always, sometimes when they're doing close-ups and things, if they finish the coverage, the other actor might leave for the day and let them finish the close-up without them. But no, Michael was always there. He always insisted on doing his off-screen dialogue for her and stuff. He was just absolutely lovely. And at the end on his last day, he went around and handed out these manila envelopes to everybody. And I looked in mine, and it was a 8x10 photo that he had signed personally to me, and he had done that for everybody. And it was such a lovely gesture. Now, some people might go, well, that's kind of egotistical. I mean, the very self-centered gift. And if it had come from, an actor who had been a diva or had been a problem, or people hated, absolutely, it would have come off that way. Coming from Michael, nobody felt that way. We were all so touched and so grateful. We all wanted something like that, but we were trying to be professional and not, asking the whole time. It was almost like it was a thank you gift for not bugging me for autographs the whole shoot. It just came off. Everybody cherished that, and I've cherished that photo to this day. And No, we all loved him, absolutely loved him, and there were tears when he left. I mean, it was that special. He was something. He really, really, and is. I mean, he's still with us, and I love the man.
Yeah, big fan. Have been since, oh God, I think the first thing I seen him in will have been Italian Job, then the Ipcress File.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the Ipcress File, that the Harry Palmer films I adored. I watched them more than I watched James Bond. So, and I do like Bond, but I do tend to watch the Harry Palmer films more than I do Bond.
It's interesting you mentioned Bond. When we were doing Gods and Monsters, and it was, the award season darling and everything, I got invited to a Golden Globe, Hollywood Foreign Press party at this big mansion in Beverly Hills. And I walked in, and over by the food table was Michael Caine talking to Sean Connery. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, Sean Connery is my Bond. I grew up with him, and I just absolutely worship the ground Sean Connery walked on. And I went over to Michael and I said, "Excuse me, I'm sure you won't remember, but I was Brian De Palma's assistant on Dressed to Kill, and he didn't remember me by name, but he said, of course I remember you, and how are you doing?" And I said, "Great," and congratulations. I forget I think he might have been up for an award that year. I can't remember. And then he, I didn't have to ask or anything. He knew. He said, "Well, let me introduce you to Sean Connery," and it was just an amazing moment, incredible moment. But the weird thing about the De Palma thing, right after I'm talking to the two of them, I look out of the corner of my eye, and over in this corner is Margot Kidder and Jennifer Salt, the two stars of Sisters, the De Palma film. and I'd never met either one of them, but I just immediately walked right over to them and told them about my De Palma connection and how much I love them. And Jennifer Salt's mom, Mary Davenport, had been in home movies and did a tiny part in Dressed to Kill. She's the woman at the table at the end where Nancy Allen and Keith Gordon are talking about going into all the gory details of a sex change. And there's this appalled woman, at the, pearl clutcher sort of at the next table, who keeps looking over horrified. Well, that's Mary Davenport, who was the mother of Jennifer Salt from Sisters. And so I was telling her that I worked with her mom and all this stuff. It was amazing. So there were so many, I just walk in the door and there's all these De Palma connections.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, I think we've covered about everything, Sam. We've been nearly 2 hours, which is fine with me. Oh my
God. Is this your longest show?
It will be my longest interview of nearly 2 hours, because I don't cut anything, so it all goes out as is. I just had some bits to it.
Yay, I broke the record. Woo!
But no, thank you for being on. Hang around after I do the outro, and I'll have a quick natter with you. But no, thank you so much for being on. I've been PD. That has been the fabulous Sam Irvin, who thank you for coming on. What stories you've told. I'm very thankful for you being on and for your time. You're amazing. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you so much. I had a blast, absolute blast. Thanks.
Excellent, excellent. So I'll say goodbye from me, and it's a goodbye from obviously Sam, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Carlisle Cult Cinema Club Presents.
Bye, everybody.
Hi, I'm Ryan Kruger. I'm the director of Fry Barry in Street Trash. This is Barry. You also may know him as 2-Bit in Street Trash. You're watching the Carlisle Cult Cinema Club. Subscribe and like Facebook social media pages.